Breakfast. So let's talk about the U.S. presidential election. It's just around the corner. In fact, next week, a matter of days now, and the world is watching closely to see who will lead the globe's top economy for the next 4 years. The contest between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris is neck and neck, with betting sides slightly favoring Mr. Trump, though opinion polls show the race to the White House remains too tight to call. The prospect of another Trump presidency has been in focus for investors as his policies include tariffs and restrictions on undocumented immigration, among other issues that are expected to push up inflation. But it's expected that the impact of the U.S. election on Nigeria and Africa will depend on the winner's policies and approach to global governance. So that's what we have next. And to help us understand the dynamics is the chairman, Invest in USA Nigeria Forum, Ifeanyi Banks. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you very much.
To Breakfast. So let's begin. If you followed the introduction, there is a big election around the corner. And so let's talk about that. How does it impact your operations? Talking about, this group you're representing.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Presidential elections are very consequential. And the U.S. presidential election is, in fact, consequential to every region in the world for many reasons, including the investment climate, including international development, right, including everything from security, to technology. It's very, very consequential. But talking about investment into the United States, whoever would emerge as the winner of this next week presidential election would really determine how the world is going to trade or invest with the U.S. going forward. Of course, it's a very divided nation right now. There are people that are of the Democratic sentiment. There are people that are of the Republican sentiment. But between the two, Trump is a businessman who is more open to, investment and trade. All right? And without sounding biased, I think a Trump's presidency will be better for both the United States and even Africa, contrary to many people's opinion. A lot of people would think, we need the liberal globalist, approach this time. But the world has major challenges to face. America, like Nigeria, has its population to feed. We have, to really revamp our economy in light of the challenges and the shocks that have been brought by COVID-19. So, and that's why you see Trump talking about America first, because come to think about it, a strong America would actually be better for the world than a weak America, because it means that the entire dynamics, of geopolitics will change if you have a weaker America, right? So for Africa, yes, now Russia is speaking to us, China is coming in, and this is putting America on its feet. But when you have someone like a Donald Trump, who is a business person, what happens is that investors' confidence, becomes higher, and people are able to do business, and America gets better. Now, for the group that I represent, and by the way, you should know, America is the largest FDI attractor in the world. Just like Nigeria is looking for foreign direct investment, America is looking for foreign direct investment. And this is why in the year 1990, Congress created an act, encouraging non-Americans to invest in America for both economic benefit as well as immigration benefit, right? And, for President Trump, like in his first term, he was very big on immigration and sending illegal, and a lot of people don't like that. Well, I'll tell you what, nobody wants illegal immigrants in their nation. Nigeria will not thrive if you have people coming from all over the place. What he's saying is, let's get the best of people in. And this is like what this Investors Immigration Act talks about. When people invest, and these are people that, you've done due diligence on them, people that made their wealth, from illegal means, what happens is we can give them opportunity to become lawful permanent resident in America with the investor as well as their families, right? So this is something that is very good. Also, maybe Trump's immigration policy is actually good for Nigeria. As we talk about brain drain, the jackpot syndrome, well, if Trump says, don't come illegally, maybe more young people who would have gone illegally would stay back in Nigeria And so we're able to also, leverage the potentials and the performance of these young people to build this economy. So in terms of investment, in terms of business, trade, I think a Trump's presidency might be much better for the world where we are at now than a Kamala's presidency.
So what do you see in terms of, Harris's position? I want to understand your own assessment of her. Are you seeing her as just a vice president herself, or you are seeing her as a fresh person coming into the system? Because I believe so many persons are possibly judging her as someone who worked with Biden. And, with the shortfalls of this administration, I believe that some persons still feel she may not do as much. So when you say Trump is a business person, I mean, there are other policies that will affect Africa beyond business, more like good relationships and all of that. So looking at Harris as a candidate herself, what do you say?
Thank you very much. And your question, is bordering on personal. And I think American politics is both about personalities and also about parties, right? Two major parties, Republican, the Democrat. The Democrat are more liberal. The Democrat have this notion that when we're together, everything is better. The Republicans are a bit different. The Democrat believes that government inclusion in business, should be more, right? The Republicans are a little bit different. The Democrats also believe in minority rights, and the rest of that, which, yes, it's good. But you see, there will always be good, better, and best. What do we need for this time, right? It's not about being, partisan on anything. But for Kamala Harris as a person, I think her trajectory, had been very progressive and very rapid, right? From AG in California, right, to vice president, and then with what has happened with Biden, and now she is the central figure.
Absolutely.
So again, I'm not sure that anybody would be well prepared, when you have such rapid, succession in your career. So, but if you look at the Democratic Party's, policies, a lot of people would want that. The question is that what is best for the world right now?
But if that's what the world gets, what happens?
If that's what the world gets, well, because again, the U.S. policies towards Africa have been traditionally, it's been a bit rigid, whether it is a Democrat that is in government, whether it is a Republican. But Washington doesn't look at Africa the way Africa perceives that we're looked at. And rightly so, because
of the
distance. Exactly. I'm going to have to clarify that. Nigeria, for instance, is geographically distant from America. So whatever happens within American borders does not directly affect Nigeria, as a geographical entity, but it affects Nigerians because, as you know, Nigerians are the highest, immigrant demography in America in terms of income and in terms of education. So we matter wherever we are. Don't even. There's no other way to say that. But in terms of geographical, geopolitics, we're very far. America would probably have something to do with Venezuela, Mexico, Honduras, Canada, people that are, and not, of course, in terms of geopolitics with Russia and the other, world powers. Now, traditionally, Washington's policy towards Africa have been like maybe trilateral. It's about development, it's about security, and it's about democracy, which is exporting America's biggest ideal to the world, and human rights. Whether it be a Republican president or a Democratic president, it would be a shade of that. The question is, if it is a Donald Trump presidency, you're going to see less focus, on the generosity of America, and you're going to see more transactional, approach towards how we deal, because, you are not my immediate neighbors. So if you're going to really relate, it will be on what basis? And the best basis should be on basis of trade, right? Recently, the data says that Nigeria has sort of balanced, its trade export and import with the United States. But what has happened is that it has actually dropped significantly. Before now, the U.S., used to do a lot of capital import into Nigeria, in terms of doing business here. But everybody, because of the challenges that we have, everybody seems to want to go back. And now, when you look at the latest data, it says Nigeria is doing about 5.6 billion, export to the United States. I mean, in terms of US dollar. And the US is doing about 5 point something billion, totaling about 10.2 billion. But before, we were doing 26 billion, even though more of it was coming from the US in terms of FDI, in terms of remittances. And somebody can say, okay, we are balancing it. We're not balancing it. It's coming down. All right? So, yes, with a Kamala's presidency, people who want multilateralism, will probably feel, oh, yeah, this is the way the world should go. But I think right now we need a stronger America that would provide a blueprint for other nations of the world to be inspired. It's not about the herds mentality. I mean, look at us in Nigeria. It's not about joining African Union or ECOWAS or all of that. We need to first, deal with the issues at home and ensure that we become a thriving nation. That way, when we relate with other people, we are relating from a position of strength. Africa needs to really develop internally, and not really wait for the big brother, America is coming to save us, even though they've been our partner in terms of combating, insecurity and all of that. But we need to do it by ourselves. When are we going to create our own F-16? When are we going to, we need to do that. Yeah.
Well, possibly, maybe that's why Nigeria decided to join BRICS as a partner. Possibly this is a step towards this. But let's talk about the decisive states. If you look at what happened during the 2020 election, and just recently, I understand that ballots were also destroyed, I think, in Oregon or something. So let's look at the decisive states in this. What are the decisive states that will really form the trajectory for this election, considering the U.S. Capitol attack and, the report afterwards?
Well, so traditionally it's been Pennsylvania, it's been states like, D.C., even New York State, and some other places, up north. But this election is totally different because the dynamics are different, right? And let me also say this is not about the state. It's about the Electoral College, really, right? Because somebody can win the popular vote in the United States and may not emerge as the president, as you know. At the end of this November election in December, the Electoral College are still going to come and say, okay, yeah, so who do we vote, as the president of the United States? And this, to the chagrin of, a lot of people, they're wondering, is this really democratic? Well, that's how America has chosen its president from the 18th century, and nobody can, really do anything about that. So for me, I think it won't be about state. I think it will be about apathetic voters who are now becoming inspired. A lot of people are moving from the Democratic train to join, say, I'm voting for Trump for the first time. Of course, a lot of people are also saying never Trump, because they are afraid, of Trump's stance of strength, which I believe America needs right now.
Right. And okay, so you're wearing several hats and we are manipulating that. You're here talking about investment. And of course, with the elections, let's just glean all we can from you while you are here. But yes, going back to what you said earlier on about America's interest in Africa through the eyes of security, electoral reforms, even our body language, if you narrow it down to electoral reforms, well, the government would tell you when the negative report is issued about its election, will say, okay, yeah, you're not exactly a big brother, or you're not exactly there to tell us how to run our elections, but, maybe to monitor from your own end. I think, Nigeria can draw from it.
Thank you very much. I think it will be the election for million. That is showing that people are not really interested, in election matters, when it comes to Nigeria. But America is totally different. Everybody is politically aware, right? So I think we can learn that, Also, the dependence on technology, right? We can also learn that. People will argue that, yes, America had glitches, with some of their systems in the last election. But we can't rely on human judgment for something as significant as a presidential election, because human errors, human biases, and of course, humans can be compromised. right? So, and in fact, the United States supported Nigeria in our last election by giving us about, I think, $45 million or something to strengthen INEC's capability, technological capability for managing that election.
Which may not exactly be sustained under a Trump presidency.
Well, Trump would invest in technology. I mean, look, his best friend right now is Elon Musk. Elon Musk would shape a lot of the policies in this Trump 2.0 administration. If Trump,
so,
exactly, if Trump emerges as president. So, and Trump is historically an open-minded person when it comes to where should the world, evolve to, and America wants to be the leader in that, in terms of sending people to space, and all of these things that, have been demonstrated. Exponential technology is at its best right now in America than any other part of the world. So they want to leverage that is their comparative advantage. All right, we can't keep slowing down so that the world can play catch up. We need to keep providing leadership so that the world can also, up its game.
And the we here is who now?
We would be
Nigeria.
Well,
Africa.
again, I think as a global citizen, so I think we will be the rest of the world. So yeah, Nigerians have a lot, or Nigeria has a lot to benefit by looking at America's blueprint. Of course, weaning out what is not working, focusing on what works so that we can adopt, and adapt that for our own electoral system here in Nigeria.
All right, so still talking about we, you're the chair investor in the USA. Talk to us about, how that goes, the prospects or possibilities available for Nigerians, well, in terms of permanent residency and all that.
Absolutely. Invest in the USA is the United States government-recognized association of the stakeholders within the EB5 industry. EB5 is just another name for the U.S. Investors Immigration Program. Now, in the year 1990, the Congress, sat and said, we need to attract investment in the United States for the purpose of economic growth, job creation, infrastructural development. But then if people bring their money, what do they get in return? How about offering them, lawful permanent residency here and a pathway to citizenship? Right, so I represent the interests of that association here in Nigeria, and one of the things that we do is that we bring our American partners every year to Nigeria, to sensitize Nigerian investors about the opportunities, in this space. This year again, we're going to have, in December, bringing our American partners. So for a Nigerian investor who wants to invest in America, you have to understand the EB5 program as both an investment program and an immigration program, right? And I've been hearing and seeing a lot of things happening, within the space in Nigeria, for which, as Chair Higher USA, I frown at. Because, Nigeria, a lot of people are just, misrepresenting these programs to Nigerian investors. People need to really be educated about what it is, what it's not, and what is possible. Now, in terms of the investment, the U.S. government, actually have designated the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, the USCIS, which is under Homeland Security, to administer this program, to say, yes, if a Nigerian investor wants to invest in America, you can't just go invest in any franchise and thinking that would lead you, to this immigration benefit. That's not the way it works. There are organizations designated as regional centers who you've got to invest in. By investing in regional centers, then the immigration attorney files, your application. It's called the I-526E. They say this person is now an investor, in the American economy through this new, enterprise that have been created, right? And so the USCIS looks at that application, verifies the information in terms of wiring the investment, and then they approve. And this approval covers for the investor's spouse, all unmarried children under 21. And guess what? They can actually even be in Nigeria while they're doing the application, all right? And they can decide to move, after the application is granted. It first gives them a 2-year conditional green card. And at the expiration of this, they remove the conditions and give them extra 3 years, which is now renewable every 10 years. Now, within this first 2 years and these 3 years, because for you to apply for citizenship in America, you first have to be a lawful permanent resident, particularly if you are going through this route. Okay. And so if you fulfill the obligations within the first 5 years, at the expiration of 5 years, you can begin to apply for citizenship, and then you can get all the attendant benefit. Now, beyond immigration, the EB5 program also gives economic benefit. It's an investment, right? And people are expecting to get some return on their investment.
Indeed.
And, there is decent return on those investments. And in fact, what I do is to, have exchanges with our American partners to be able to negotiate better deals, for Nigerian investors when they are going through this process. I go back and forth, doing cross-border investment facilitation here and in the United States to ensure that Nigerian investors get the best of this program, for whatever dreams and desires they are doing this for. And typically is for a better future for their children.
All right. So on a final note, give us, because we understand that the forum has basically just started formal operations as of August or thereabouts. So, give us a sense on what is key now. So what is the trajectory like? Where are you headed?
Fantastic. I think right now it would be to actually make the forum a forum, and it's to drive membership.
To What's it like? What's it looking like in terms of membership?
Oh, yeah, it's looking very great. I mean, I'm on a Nigerian tour right now, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Uyo, Kano, just to find stakeholders within the EB5 industry, who are probably promoters and agents of regional centers, and say, okay, we need to come together and we need to ensure that we have a common front in educating the Nigerian investor, about this program. I mean, recently in June of this year, an American was actually sentenced to jail by the Federal High Court of Nigeria for misrepresenting the EB5 program. So it can be that bad because a lot of money is involved. And so you have some people that are thinking fast who think they can fleece investors of their hard-earned money. That shouldn't happen.
All right. Fifeomi Banks, we thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Banks is the chairman, Invest in USA Nigeria Forum. Once again, many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Just before we